What's up, my friends? How's it going today? Well, Carpo here. It's Saturday evening, and since I got back from Symbiosis, I've been doing some thinking about community and groups and hippies, if you will, which is something that I kind of thought that I would tackle in this video. From the time I was about 15 years old, when I discovered the Grateful Dead. Back then I was wearing heavy metal shirts and had long hair, and it just morphed into this 90s hippie, if you will. And the whole second hippie wave thing, really it never ended, but I hate using that definition, that term, hippie, and it generally doesn't fit, but I've been called, a dirty hippie or a stoner hippie, whatever hippie, so many times over the years that I just became immune to the idea of it. Like I was thinking the other day about what is it about the hippies that people hate so much, and it was because the Symbiosis was held in in Eastern Oregon, and in a fairly rural conservative area where I'm sure that the neighbors just thought we were lunatics, whereas some groups of people may be sitting in a line of cars waiting to get in somewhere, and they might just sit there and gripe about it. We all get out of the car and hula hoop and ride scooters and talk to each other and pass bowls, and I thought, there's something about that communal ability. And it's funny because the hippies in the 60s were called communists because they enjoyed the communal lifestyle. But that word communist had such a connotation that was attached to the enemy, the bad guys. And anyway, without getting into that whole thing, because that goes deep, but I started thinking, what is it about the alternative community, the hippies, what you might call, we enjoy, let's say, music. And I started thinking there's the music for the ears, we love the smells. Everybody's always making fun of patchouli and that's, the smells. We love the smells, the music, the visuals, the lights, feeling the music, or drugs, whatever a person perhaps takes. But the point being that it's like a bombardment of the senses, and going to a concert or a festival like that really, overwhelms the senses, and some people absolutely love that. And it's something that that isn't just personal, but something that you can share with the group. Where there's some events where, let's say you go to a county fair, okay? You're not looking at other families and saying, oh yeah, hey, how's it going, and introducing yourself. You're there with your family, usually, and the families and the groups do their own little things, and everybody's there with their own values, understandings, beliefs. The only thing that they have in common is that they're there to ride the rides. Well, when it comes to music, it's different because certain groups will attract to certain types of music, and this is why, whereas a music concert is different than a fair or a festival, because people might be very similar, have similar interests if they're into the same music, especially the Grateful Dead or Fish, let's say. But at a festival like that, there are so many different types. At Symbiosis, for 7 days, there were like 300 and something different workshops, acts, bands, and DJs. And at least 150, I think, different, music acts. And some of them were just hardcore psytrance techno that's so boring and repetitious that I cannot even stand it. And some of it was some more creative psytrance of the same style that I did like. And this is how I feel about all music. There are some that really attract me, and some that don't, but I don't base it on what's popular, what other people are listening to. It's about what moves me. And I think that that's what a lot of people, I would hope that most people who listen to music do it because it moves them. But it's always for different reasons. So I would say I've enjoyed communicating, talking, and discussing with that hippie element, if you will, and find myself understanding where people are coming from. But I will say that I do understand why people have a negative image of that lifestyle. Now, there are hood rats, tour rats that cruise around and don't give a damn about anybody else except for their own profit and wallet. People who really do stink like no other. I know that for a fact that, some people are proud of how bad they smell. And that may sound, ridiculous, but it's not just an accident that some people stink. when I was younger, I had friends who, when we all went to Dead shows together, I wore tie-dyes, I had ripped up clothes, I might not shower for a couple days, but I always kept myself clean, and I showered when I could. Whereas some dudes, I actually heard a couple of my friends competing about who hadn't taken a shower the longest. And they all started getting dreadlocks, and their dreadlocks got bugs, and pretty soon they were infested, and they all had to have them cut off. It was absolutely disgusting, and from that perspective, I can completely agree. You know, but it's a to each his own kind of thing. And some people really want to associate with what they like, their music or, you know, their lifestyle. They want people to know. Always, you know. I'll give you an example. When I go to a festival or a concert, I'll usually dress up in my garb, whatever I'm going to wear. You know, I won't wear a polo shirt and slacks, of course. But if I go to the grocery store, you know, I might just wear whatever I'm wearing. But generally, it's kind of always about, you know, the same kind of thing. Point being that I'm okay with just being an average Joe. And for many years, actually, I really didn't wear anything but jeans and a regular shirt. I mean, I went through a long phase after, especially probably about, I don't know, I guess it was probably after I'd been with my wife for quite a while, and I figured, well, you know, we're married, we love each other, I don't need to go out and attract a mate, so what's the point in dressing up? And then I had a discussion with somebody once. I was giving him shit for how much money they spent on a shirt, and just kind of teasing, you know, because like $50 for that shirt. And he's like, well, I like to look nice, and my girl says I look nice in it. And I thought about it, and I said, that is totally legitimate and justified. You want your spouse to still continue to see you, you know, as sexy, if you will. Yeah, you don't want to just fall into being a slob, of course, but it's easier to be passive and not, you know, not care as much when we are content where we are. But the point that I was getting is that we want to dress like we look, or I should say dress like we feel. We want to look like we feel, because that attracts people with similar interests. Sometimes. People with similar, you know, that can work against us sometimes. I mean, sometimes similar interests means that we're living in our own reality tunnel. But I guess that's where I'll go with this. That's okay. You know, I'm so sick of trying to, you know, hear people trying to prove themselves and explain themselves and say, no, this is the right way and this is the right way, and, you know, screw those damn hippies, you know, they should be working harder. To give you a perfect example, I was watching a news clip on YouTube. Hey, Raven, from the eclipse, and the comments on there, it wasn't just one or two, but like several different comments that said, one said, don't these people have to work? And another one way down somewhere else, totally separate, said, you know, yeah, a bunch of people just using the eclipse as an excuse to get, you know, to get out of work. And somebody responded, you know, haven't you ever heard of planning a day off? I mean, it's not like this eclipse just popped out of nowhere. People planned way ahead for this. But what I saw in that comment was, it was either a jealousy that other people can find such excitement in something that's only 2 minutes long, or if it's not a jealousy, it's perhaps the person is just, I'm trying to figure out how to word it, because I know a lot of people out there are very condescending towards other people for having fun, and that's kind of where I'm trying to get at. Like, fucking have fun. Get out and do shit. Life is about experiences. It's not about how hard you work. It's not about how much money you make. But for some people, that's become the be-all, end-all of life. It's all about, you know, how much they can show for their efforts. Look at what I drive, and look at what I do. You know, a $100,000 car sitting in the driveway doesn't do me any good in my daily life, any more than my $1,000 car here. If it gets me where I'm going, I'm happy. And does that mean that I'm superior? Fuck no. I mean, just because I don't, you know, money isn't my be-all, end-all of life, it doesn't mean that I'm sitting here scathing at people who do. To each his own. But I don't go around telling other people to stop worrying about money or stop caring about money, or you don't need to earn money, because I know better. I know that some people, that's what they do and that's their interest. But I also know it's kind of it's a yearning for something more, something greater, that community. You know, there's one way, a line of thinking that says that people are poor flock together because they're poor, and kind of justify being poor by saying, well, you know, the rich people are unhappy, and oh well. And instead of just saying, well, we're poor by circumstance, to say we're poor by choice. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. But usually it's not a matter of, it's a matter of not being motivated to go out and get rich, because the experiences that we've had are worth so much more. You know, the money I spend to go out and have fun, it's not that much. I don't have very much cash for extracurricular stuff. I can't fly to another country, and you know, going to Symbiosis basically broke the bank for me, but it's something I will never forget. And that's just what life's all about to me, is finding that community and finding that understanding, but not so I can just agree with everything everyone says. There are going to be people who are just going to be totally phony ass hippies that, you know, have this idea that they understand everything and want to tell you everything's about chakras and crystals. And then there are some extreme realists who want to say, well, you know, I'm an atheist and we don't believe in anything, we're all just here. There's so many different viewpoints. And the main focus, I guess, that I'm trying to convey here is that it's not worth trying to change other people. It's not worth trying to justify who you are to other people. It's not worth trying to prove yourself to others or the value or worthiness of your side of things unless a person is willing to listen and actually cares. There's nothing wrong with explaining, but there's a difference between explaining and arguing. And I can see from the outside, if I was, you know, if I was a cowboy and I'd grown up in, you know, out in the back, wherever, you know, out in the desert, ranching cattle, you know, growing food, whatever it is, and there's all of a sudden this festival in town and all these long-haired hippies show up with all their tie-dyes, it's hard not to judge. I can see that. It would be very similar to me riding by a rodeo and looking in there and going, what the hell are they doing? That's what they're interested in, you know, or sports, a sports game. Sports to me is just utterly boring. There's a fight tonight, I guess, and everybody's interested in, and I just, boxing, UFC, all of that is just junk to me. But I'll never tell people that they shouldn't be interested in it. So, I guess it would be nice to see people understand that most hippies, if you will, mean well. And most of them don't want to harm anyone. They don't want to steal anything. They're not just grungy, filthy, drug-taking people. They're people who find community. And that's really all we're all about. That's what humans need. We need community. We need family. We need understanding. But there's a certain line you have to draw with community and with family and with anybody. You know, when people are pushing the limits, like right now in society, we are so divided in so many ways. And I don't know if that can be really mended unless we change our complete way of thinking. But even then, I mean, changing your way of thinking doesn't mean it converts to the way another person thinks. I think that it's the variety through life that, the spice of life, if you will, that keeps things interesting. You can never know exactly what's right until you've seen what's wrong. And often you can't tell when something was wrong until you've seen it done right. So by observing other people and saying, well, this person is violent, they're angry, they're abusive, and you can tell they're unhappy. And this person is kind, compassionate, and caring, and you can tell they seem happy. Well, you can only draw so many conclusions. You never be in another person's head. But you can use your best judgment to say, look at this group of people, and look at this group of people, and who seems to be happier, who's truly enjoying themselves, who's getting the most out of life and experiencing it. Not for saying, haha, we're better than, or they're better than. It's just a matter of seeking out something that, it's just like looking for, if you want to play sports, seeking out a sport that relates to you. If you're tall, maybe you play basketball. If you're stocky, maybe you play football. You seek out something that you know you can be good at and will resonate with your being. And the same way with any type of music or festivities or lifestyle. I like to say, you know, I grew up with the Dead and Fish and all that stuff. I wouldn't even listen to Fish until years after Jerry Garcia died, because I figured they were just trying to kind of take over from the Dead. You know, I was resistant to all that. But it wasn't, I mean, in the 90s I listened to a little bit. I listened to like Propeller Heads and Chemical Brothers and whatever EDM they had then, which it was just called techno or, electronica, if you will. Today there are a vast number of electronic musicians, and I've just fallen completely in love. And the funny, I'm bringing that up because it's so interesting to see how the bluegrass, hippie type music has morphed into this combination of that with electronic music, hardcore, hard-hitting, boom, boom, boom. Makes you want to dance, makes you want to move. Some of it sucks, and some of it's fantastic. Like, we were sitting at camp the day after the eclipse, and we were camped with these people from Australia that we met. And there's this girl, Nat, and she actually holds a festival called the Mushroom Valley Festival in Australia. So we're sitting there in the morning, and I hear these horns playing. You can hear it coming from the thing. She goes, "Oh, Grouch is playing." She's like, "Oh, I wanted to go see him so bad." And I'd never even heard of Grouch. It's just like, but I came home, and I found it, and I turned it on, and it was that song. I could hear those same horns that I heard in the background. And the nostalgia of just hearing it, even in the background, I never even heard any of his, work, but instantly brought me back to that moment. And that's the key to falling in love with music or ideas or festivities, is to really be in a strongly, contented state when you experience something. And the way that your body, your neurochemistry, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, they all play a role in bonding to experiences, just like we do with people. So I guess I would just say, to each his own. I'm only saying that it's not worth resisting something that you love, or worrying about how other people view you or your lifestyle, if it makes you happy. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. I'm happy to be a hippie, if you will, but I'm not really. I mean, there's no real definition. I cannot think of a definition for myself. I don't put myself in any categories. It's just, we go by what other people label us as most of the time, because, otherwise, when somebody says, "What kind of music do you like?" and you say, "Well, I can't really label it," that doesn't do any good. You could at least say, "Well, I like bluegrass, I like electronic." We have categories because it helps us understand things better. So don't be afraid to, to label ourselves when we have to define something, but I prefer not to. I prefer to say I'm a human being. I exist on this earth. I'm trying to unlearn all the bullshit that I learned when I was a kid, and to really relearn how to experience and enjoy things to their fullest with these senses, to see beauty, to hear music, to taste and smell and touch things that move me, if you will. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people have thought of that as the evil. They become ascetics. No food, no gifts. They figure that being here on earth means that God wants us to suffer. What a crock of bullshit. And that's what Siddhartha went through, in the Buddha, the story of Buddha. It's a metaphor for, don't fuck up and make yourself suffer when the whole world is here for you to enjoy. Just make sure that you're not interfering with anyone else's enjoyment to have your own.